And we are live. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Holy Crap, the Vlogcast. A vlogcast that comes from a skeptical point of view to answer some of the questions of why. This vlogcast started as a combination of spite, the Streisand effect, because, oh, baby, is there enough spite to go around right now. And we're going to be tackling some of that tonight together because screw y'all who said that we were overreacting in 2016. Go fuck yourselves. And part of this is to follow through with the old adage that sometimes the journey is more important than the destination. I'm your main host. I'm known as Shujin Tribble, and you can find me pretty much everywhere under that name. That's Shujin. Good to be back with you. Hi. So yeah, we've got we don't have just me tonight, which actually works out conveniently. From the right-hand coast of the U.S., Unrenowned Tech. Good morning.
Morning. You know, I remember the intros where I'd usually be like close to last to introduction because we had so many people all over the place, and it was just like, it was like, okay, just gotta wait, just gotta wait, just gotta wait. It's like, no, it's oh crap, I gotta be ready.
Yeah,
I don't.
yeah. Going from the East Coast to the West Coast for those exact reasons. And speaking of which, going to the left coast, IO Cloud. Good evening.
I'm just laughing my ass off at Canadian politics right now. Laughing and laughing and laughing. Something like 168, 169 seats now for the Liberal Party.
Nice.
The Conservative Party has about 140 something. The NDP has less than 10. I think it's 8. And the Green Party, which had about 4 seats, is now down to 1. What I'm laughing at is that the two main opposition parties, the Conservative and the NDP, the leaders lost their seats. I don't think the people of their ridings were happy with them.
Yeah, that's fair enough. If I remember
And
right from what Dallin used to say, NDP was pretty much not a good group overall.
yeah, depends on whether it's the provincial NDP or the federal NDP. The federal NDP is supposed to hold a minority government in check because generally they will side with a liberal minority government and not with a conservative one. With a conservative one, they will hammer. But Jagmeet Singh losing his seat, the irony.
Yeah, I get you.
And so, just so that everybody realizes it, I sent in a blank ballot. Why did I send in a blank ballot? Because the previous election, nobody cared that I didn't get my ballot in time. Not the leaders, not the riding that I was supposed to be voting for, not Elections Canada. Nobody cared, not even the media. And I'm going to keep on sending in blank ballots from now on. Yes, I voted. None of you deserve my vote.
That's fair. So everybody, hi. Let me finish up the other the other stuff really quickly. If you'd like to be joining us as we're recording live, I do have the live chat over on the correct side of the screen so that I'm pointing in the right spot for everything else. We do record live over on YouTube. You're welcome to join us and be part of the chat, which, of course, Stephanie is back again. Good to have you. I'm going to do something that I haven't done in a little while, and I had stopped doing it in a form of protest for reasons. For those of you that are watching, you will recognize that I'm finally bringing back my blue hat. Now, I had been wearing this hat as a protest against the hats of a different color. And I got all kinds of pissy, admittedly, because of stuff that the party associated with said color was not doing, or seemed not to be doing minimally. This month, we have now crossed into May. This is the 20th year since my wife's passing. And later this month, I will be canceling our show so that I can do my 36-hour radio stream marathon out of Second Life again. That's going to be happening the weekend of the 23rd. It is specifically a charity stream for the Ride for Roswell, which is what this hat is in reference to. I have things to kind of get together, and I'm battling a lot of mental stuff, which is going to be coming up momentarily in the freestyle. But I'm going to be wearing the hat again for the foreseeable future. Because, and I believe I do speak on behalf of everyone on the show, past and present and future, fuck cancer. Yeah, obviously there's nobody that's saying, no, I don't share the same sentiment. So thank you. Thank you on that. Anything before we get rocking and rolling over here, by the way?
Fuck cancer. Fuck cancer. Fuck
I mean,
cancer.
that's
Fuck cancer.
it's pretty well covered. That's okay.
I guess we're going to have to flag this one as NSFW.
Not at this point exactly, but it's borderline.
I think we should hit a premise with, we are not medical professionals before we get into any of the stuff that we're talking about here. We're going by with what is reported through the news as we can best verify from what are the sources.
Yeah, that's probably a really good piece.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So if anybody tries to flag the video as like, oh, this is giving false medical whatever, it's like, no. We're not giving medical advice. The medical professionals of any source that we're citing is giving advice.
And we're commenting on our opinions of exactly that same information. So,
As laypersons.
As laypersons, because that's who we are and that's what we do.
Yeah, it's kind of like, I like to watch some people talk about firearms because I like to be educated about things.
Sure.
And some of them give their personal opinions based on their experience with it. But they also cite, what the manufacturer says. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be doing the equivalent of citing manufacturer, except in this case we're citing news sources, and then going from there on what we think about that. And maybe even what we'd like to see happen based on this knowledge. And yes, we acknowledge there's no single one news source that is truly not putting any kind of opinion into their piece whatsoever.
So, with that caveat in the bag, let me go ahead and get things rolling over here and get the freestyle out of the way, because it pretty well covers stuff. So, with 5 minutes on the clock, your freestyle starts now. Stress, like I said earlier, it is 20 years as of this month since the passing of my wife. And I know I keep saying that I would really like to not necessarily, bring all of my dirty laundry in. But, it's a big piece of me. It is a huge piece of me. And you guys have known that, who've been with me for any length of time. Some of you, in some ways, kind of share in the stress that I've got. Going through that kind of trauma of not being able to save someone, to use an expression, it does things to people. It's fair to say that it has irreparably changed my brain. I described it early on as having broken, shattered, even, and that things just didn't get the opportunity to do anything other than just try to meld back together again. And I know that there are people who are just like, well, you could have gone through some kind of mental health services. No, no, I couldn't have. I've I've been through. As a kid, I was taken to a couple of child psychologists. One did not gel with me. Another one I tried to gel with to a certain degree, and I was kind of ignored when they left because I tried to stay in touch as a kid. That just didn't work. So I've got trust issues with mental health professionals, and I don't like the idea of having my brain chemistry altered. I don't want to do that. Could it perhaps help me? Maybe. But I make the choice for myself that I do not want to. I don't want to do that. Now, to that same extent, also, I don't want to try any kind of psychotropic drugs. I don't particularly care for the idea of trying cannabis or stuff like that. Hell, it's a rarity even for me to overindulge in alcohol. Never mind even have any. So the stress that I've had over the last 20 years has changed. It's gotten easier to deal with, and maybe the two go hand in hand. But it's always there. There's always that background radiation, that background hum, that static sound that we grew up on with old tube TVs when you didn't have the game turned on for channel 4. It's always going to be there. At this point, I think that I might have maybe another 20, 30 years tops in me. I mean, 85 years, 86 years would be a pretty good run in the current climate. But I don't have any illusions that what I've got that's been in the back of my head for 2 decades is going to necessarily just go away. And I don't expect that from anybody else who goes through trauma either. So, whatever it is that you've gone through that has been life altering, that has been personality damaging, that has made you really question, can you go on? Yeah, you can. It may not be pretty and it may not be comfortable. Hell, you might think, why bother? And I get that. But if you'll pardon me being selfish for just a second, kind of like you around anyway. Thanks for trying. So before we go over into the horrible scopes, like I said, it's not going to be an easy month for me, and I know it. Most of the emotional landmines that could potentially come up over the last 20 years, they have come up. There's been one that popped up a year ago, give or take, that really blew me for a loop. And it's the kind of thing that you don't expect to have happen because you just don't think about it, and all of a sudden there it is. All right, well now I know how to deal with that one. But I'm gonna keep, I'm gonna keep doing the best that I can, and if I can help a couple of folks here and there just by being a good example, that's great. Because truth be told, I don't have very much past that I can do most of the time. So, we just be good people. Sometimes that's good enough, right? So let's go ahead and do that because horrible scopes is a fun thing to do, or at the very least drives me up a wall. So for the horrible scopes, of course, those of you that know what your astrological sign is, cool. Those of you that don't, you can make it up however it is that you'd like to do it. And if you'd like to do it in a fun way and give away some of your precious money, you can order a D12 from the nice folks over there at Heart of the Game Fredonia. The guys that support us by not sending me a cease and desist letter and actually like me for some reason. Heart of the Game Fredonia, hail, hail Fredonia, home of the Blue Devil. They'll be happy to sell you one of those mimic eggs. I don't know that it's not. I don't know that it is.
Don't be a mimic. Don't be a mimic. Don't be a mimic. I have to sing the song every time you mention the mimic.
It's perfectly reasonable.
First victim of the mimic curse, I guarantee it.
Don't know who it is, but you know what? It's fine. Be in touch with them and ask how the mimic is doing. Maybe they'll set up a streaming webcam for it one of these days. That'd be actually really cool. So as far as the scopes are concerned, there have been a couple times where secret messages have been slipped into the scopes, prompting you to have to read the first letter in each sentence or paragraph to decode it. I mean, that's a thing that's happened. This time, we're not doing anything like that. Not even close. But we are taking the first letter from each line from last week to see if there were any secretly included messages that even we didn't know about that might have been subconsciously included. And to be clear, if you go and you read the scopes online, it's not going to make sense because I'm working from the original script in the Google Docs, not the posted versions. You have been warned. Aries, last week, your script letters were YFSATOEW. And we can make out two words easily from that. Sato, which is a Japanese name, and toe, as in foot finger. Well, in Japanese, it's literally finger of foot. So this week, imagine trying to explain to Twilight Sparkle that she's going to go from having hooves to having tentacles on the ends of her legs. You thought she could hyperventilate from ladybugs. Folks, you ain't seen nothing yet.
Sorry, helps if I turn the microphone on. Taurus, last week your script letters were WBW, FITST, and your words are fit, as in physically, fits, as in if I fits, I sits, and it's, as in the passive contraction does not have an apostrophe S. Or sorry, the possessive contraction does not have an apostrophe S. So this week, did you know that you can actually buy boxes instead of buying cat toys and letting your cats play in the boxes? Ignore the middleman and just buy boxes at the office supply store instead. You know what? I stand behind this 100%. I have 2 cats, and it doesn't matter what it is. If it came in a box and the box isn't broken down, the box is theirs.
Cats, boxes, paper bags. And I was just thinking, Sato as an Empress Sato from the Terran Empire.
No,
Second?
actually, I was thinking of the rival in Karate Kid 2.
I was thinking about Her Excellency the Empress. Gemini, last week your script letters were YWLEALDN, and we're kind of stumped on finding a word straight away. The letters LEA was making us think of the word lead was about to happen, but then that pesky L got in the way. Little. So instead, we'll just use the name Leia as your word. So this week, do you know anyone named Leia? According to some web ads, there's a Leia looking for people like you within 20 miles of your IP address. Invite her out for coffee. And before we forget, the sainted Leia, Carrie Fisher, may she rest in peace.
Look, I'm just saying, if you get an ad for hot cougars in your area and you live in the mountains, it might not be the cougars you're looking for.
Yeah, speaking of which, Felis isn't in the chat right yet, but that'll change, I'm sure. Cancer Mode Child, last week your script letters were WT, BG, TYLP, which really is just letter salad. I mean, we could start off with what the, but then it falls flat on its face.
Which form of its was that? Come on. Which one? Which one? Which form? Come on. Come on, Shu. You know.
I wrote the correct one. You can see it right there. I wrote the correct one. I know what I'm doing here. Look, folks, bottom line.
Do you know how many times I've had to edit your stuff?
Bottom line.
There's no apostrophe S because it's a possessive contraction.
Right. So, Cancer, we'd really like to help you. Honestly, we really would, but we can't help you if you won't help yourself. So this week, you know that letter Y in there? It is trying to do some very heavy lifting here, and it's not nearly enough. It needs to stop skipping leg day. So how about you just go and show it how it's done?
Or hire Richard Simmons. Okay, everybody, and kick and fight and sorry, Leo.
You're not sorry.
Sorry, not sorry. Leo, last week your script letters were WAYAMBYFD. So you get way to start off with, but you also get the name Maya in reverse. And as we know, Maya is the name of a 3D creation program that was once owned by Cellchrome Graphics Incorporated. And for those asking who was SGI, they developed a reality coprocessor GPU for the Nintendo 64. Plus, those guys were so smart, 20 SGI employees found ArtX, eventually acquired by ATI Technologies, and they made the graphics engine for the GameCube. So this week, find some Let's Play videos of Nintendo 64 and GameCube titles and see how good those platforms really were back in the day. And they were good.
Virgo, last week your script letters were TSA, SIR, WVTM. And look at that, right in the middle of it all. Sir. There's also TSA, which is scary. A simple term that gives you the impression that it's worth a little more respect. And that's what you need to learn, a little respect. So this week, listen to some music by Aretha Franklin and Erasure. You'll learn.
Just a little bit.
RESPCT.
Or if you really want to have a fun time, listen to do a search on YouTube for Tiny Toon Adventures, Respect, and you get the Tiny Toon Adventures music video version of it. It's great!
Oh, my favorite song of theirs is the arcade one. If you desire to annihilate, exterminate, go to the arcade.
I try to discover. And that's as far as I'm going to try to sing that song. Libra, last week, your script letters were HDGBTSAP. So here's just a little bit of a stretch for you. There's a band's name in there, believe it or not. TSAP stands for The Sound of Philadelphia. Okay, that's an A, not an O. I screwed this up. Okay, new plan. This week, the letters GBT stands for Guided Biofilm Therapy. It's a dental treatment. I'm sending you to the dentist so you can stay quiet about this whole thing. Stop asking questions for an hour about how I screwed this up and didn't fix it in time. Shut up.
You know,
It's fine.
there's also Bat in there. I'm Batman.
No, there isn't.
If you rearrange the letters.
That's not the point.
Well, task with SAP is passed backwards.
Yeah, well, SAP is you. So just double dumbass on you. Go.
SAP also
Okay.
makes maple syrup. Scorpio, last week your script letters were TSSS, TSUTW. That's 8 consonants total, 3 unique ones, and 1 vowel. Folks, this is what we like to call an imagination moment, meaning we need to come up with something, anything that makes a hint of sense. This week, after jumbling the letters through a randomizer, nothing seems to get a hit for us. The closest we've got is for Times Square Stores, which was a store chain that went defunct in 1989. You know, that was a good store, though. Hot cashews sold right near the exit. Good times.
Yeah, TSS stores, man. I miss TSS.
Yeah, see, if you'd replace those first two T's with P's, then my cats would have been all over the place going, "Where's the treats? Where's the treats?"
I was
By the
actually
way-
trying to figure out how I could make that work, and it couldn't.
And by the way, for all you cat fans out there, tell your cat I said. Pss, 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 pss.
My mother had the ability to call cats from anywhere. She was able to say kitty, kitty, kitty fast enough that the cats would come to her. I can't do it. I was tongue-tied until I turned 30. So instead of kitty, 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 I go kiddie, 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 Kidd. What? It would go something like this. Kitty, 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 kitty. All the cats would come.
That
So
works.
what was I? Sagittarius? No.
Yeah.
Peter Piper picked up the peppers.
What? What was that? Tech. Sagittarius. Last week your script letters were EBHFAYHS. And you're not going to believe what this combination is. Back in the days of World War II, comic book character Clark Kent was drafted into the army, but he knew he couldn't actually fight. His secret identity as Superman would be too easily discovered. So when they were giving him an eye test, he used his X-ray vision to read the test board in the next room. And what was the combination of letters printed on this test board? So this week, come on, you don't really think the stars would just make up a story like that, right? Learn to be more trusting. I want proof, Shu.
That is exactly how Clark Kent got out of being drafted for World War II. It's actually true. Capricorn, last week your script letters were SSS PWHH. What are you doing to us, Capricorn? Scorpio had it bad, but at least they had a vowel. So listen to this here. Listen. This not only makes no sense alphabetically, Even Gaelic speakers would look at that and let you know, "'Tis shite, my laddie." So this week, if you speak to someone who claims to be Gaelic and talks like that, they are not, and you should really leave them alone.
Aquarius, this week your script letters were BBM, ODTTSA. Honestly, it's kind of a fun one. You get mod, short for moderator, and TTS, short for text to speech, which means we know what you'll be up to soon. So this week, drop in on a Twitch streamer who has a text to speech system set up and send a bad dad joke. Maybe you'll get banned, maybe not. By the way, you also have BBM, which is short for BlackBerry Management, the enterprise utility to manage blackberries out in the field. Yes, I'm old. Get over it.
I mean, you want to talk fairy tale stuff? I mean, that's fine.
Pisces. Last week your script letters were AOBNTNEA. Okay, so there's nothing to work here unless you're thinking of the letters individually. AOB, those are blood types. There's no N. Well, technically there is blood type null. So maybe that's as it should be. And of course, there's blood type T. So this week, if you know who has type T, you're a nerd. You better own that moniker, or we'll take your nerd card away.
NEA also stands for National Education Association.
Okay. AOB also stands for Area of Blast, but we don't ever use that now, do we?
Well, if you play Warhammer, it does.
Boy's got a good point right over there. Those are your horrible scopes for this week. If you like what you got, don't care, because I put way too much effort into it this week, believe it or not. Yes, there was actual effort put into it, so screw y'all that think otherwise. If you'd like a nicer or naughtier one for yourself or someone else, you can literally bribe me by asking, because vanity is one of the currencies that I trade in. Or if you'd like to go with something a little bit more substantive, you can actually literally bribe me with actual funds. I've got a coffee page set up, coffee.com/Icarus the Lunar Guard. I'll have these posted at the end of the week. Tumblr, Facebook, Coffee, Discord, BlueSky, because, you know, that's the way it works around over here, because that's the kind of guy that I am, and that's kind of the way it's going to work over here. This is episode 534 on the docket, Your Honor. Medical Research Ethics Violations by RFK Jr. Maybe. And I'm putting maybe in here because
it takes a board to determine that.
Yeah, that's true. Plus, there's also the whole just talking about an ethics violation is not itself an ethics violation. Until something's actually happened, it's kind of hard to actually say somebody is truly guilty of something. That's kind of the way that it's supposed to work.
Yeah, it's like watching a whole lot of police. There's a whole lot of police videos I've enjoyed watching, police channels and such. And they all point out the same thing. Just because a person's been arrested and charges have been filed against them, until it goes before a court and determined that there is a case and found guilty, the person's not guilty.
Or at least not yet.
Yeah, not yet as according by law. So they're treated as somebody who is not yet guilty.
So we got a couple of things that popped up in my feeds that were very much of the, okay, this is worth talking about. And, well, I forwarded them into the Discord for folks to take a look at, and it's just like, you know what? Yeah, this is worthwhile. The first one was the link to an NPR News article, which the headline of the article is RFK Jr. to require placebo-controlled studies for new vaccines. That's the headline. The other one was a link to a post by Concordance over on BlueSky. The entirety of the text of that BlueSky post says the following, and it is linked in the show notes, by the way. Quote, Just to be clear, this is a violation of the fundamental ethical principle in clinical trial design called equipoise. Again, continuing to read. Equipoise, and I hope that I've got that pronounced correctly. Uh, Equipoise means that no one is exposed to excessive risk just to test the therapy. That's specifically why vaccine trials don't use placebo arms. Ethical violation as policy. Unquote. We are collectively of the opinion that this posted opinion is more accurate than it is just hyperbole. However, we also recognize that someone's post on a social media platform tends to be opinion more than fact. However, there is also a linked news article, which, come to think of it, I didn't actually link that. I should really do that. From Reuters, the headline of which reads, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. will require all new vaccines to undergo placebo testing, Washington Post reports. So, we're going to, the best that we can as lay people, again reminding you, kind of talk about what are vaccines, how do they work, why they are superior to getting sick from associated disease, and then kind of explain why we are also of the opinion that what is being suggested by Robert Kennedy Jr. would be an ethics violation in the medical community that would only be topped by the late 30s and early 1940s Germany. So keeping that in mind, and of course hoping that we don't end up having a drop in network connectivity like we did 2 weeks ago. Sorry about that again. Let's kind of go into this and kind of deal with a couple of these pieces, shall we? Item number one, guys. Had you seen about that NPR article or similar before I posted it to the Discord grouping?
I had not seen that one.
The private grouping or this one?
In HCTV.
I know I've seen stuff about him being an idiot. Oh, there it is.
Well, that's the one that
Yeah.
that was linked that I forgot to add to it all.
Yeah, that's just it. There's this vaccine that came out about 80 years ago that if it had to have a placebo, people would have died. Because I know this because somebody tried a different version of the vaccine with the live virus versus a deactivated inert virus, and kids got sick, and kids ended up permanently injured.
Yeah, it's funny how that works that way, isn't it?
Mm. And I'm somebody that's very cautious about vaccines. I can never have the shingles vaccine. I have to be careful about the COVID vaccines. I've reacted to those ones. I've reacted to flu vaccines. And I'm talking immediate hives or ending up in the hospital within 12 hours of getting the vaccine. Now, Dr. Mike on YouTube actually said, well, you can't prove that the vaccine caused that reaction because it could have just happened because it happened. You know, it does not prove that the vaccine was the reason. I watched one of my babies turn blue right after they got their MMR. And MMR is one of the vaccines that we have to be careful with because it's egg-based. Flu vaccine is egg-based. I believe the COVID vaccine was egg-based in order to get it out so quick.
No, COVID vaccine, that was one of those weird ones.
Yeah, but in order to manufacture so much so quick, they had to use what they knew would work versus, and as well as the shingles vaccine is also probably egg based. So I have to be very careful about vaccines for me. And my kids are now old enough that they can make decisions on their own about whether or not they get vaccines.
According to the Allergy Network, Allergy and Asthma Network, the COVID 19 vaccines authorized by the FDA were not manufactured using egg products nor technology involving eggs.
Well, something in that vaccine caused me to go
Oh,
into an arrhythmia within 12 hours.
including Mayo Clinic also confirmed that the COVID vaccine from Moderna, nor the Pfizer BioNTech COVID 19 used eggs in the development, production, nor do they contain eggs or any
But
kind of
again,
egg substance.
some
However, um,
something in it caused me to react, and it's not just the Pfizer vaccine, it was also the Moderna one.
well,
I
hold on.
might be I might be able to use the one left
Wait,
over
wait,
because there was three different vaccines. I might be able to
wait.
use that third vaccine, but Moderna, I ended up with COVID arm, and Pfizer, I ended up with the arrhythmia.
Okay. To continue what I was saying, the Mayo Clinic does advise that, however, despite the lack of eggs, those who have severe allergic reactions to eggs or any other kind of substance, like for example, I have a severe reaction to a certain kind of food product, are encouraged to remain for observation for no less than 30 minutes after injection. So it sounds like you're one of the people that does have a reaction to something in there, even though it's not the egg that's causing it because there's no egg in it. So there's something in there that is causing your severe reaction. Now, I know that between me and my family, when we got the vaccine, yes, we know that you had a severe, really, really bad one. I know that of the family members that I was with at the time, I had the most severe reaction. However, I didn't have anaphylaxis, but I
Fortunately.
did have a nasty reaction. Now, my mother is allergic to eggs. That's why she can't get um, certain kinds of shots or vaccines. However, she didn't have a reaction. So, whatever was in there, it really is genetic dependent as to who's going to have a reaction to it. They also
Yes.
don't. The vaccines also didn't contain any kind of preservatives nor metals.
Well, whatever was that I reacted to was something in the Pfizer vaccine, something that was in the Moderna vaccine. That COVID arm was my entire arm that got the shot, and it was starting to go into my chest. And it started up about a week after the shot, but immediately the area was red and sore. But the entire arm was red onto my chest, and I just happened to show my cardiologist, look what's going on, and he said, "What did you get?" COVID vaccine. Yeah, that's COVID arm. And he brought his son, who's a general practitioner, in to show him my arm. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's COVID vac. That's COVID arm.
yeah. Considering that the methodology, the technology that was used for for COVID, very specifically in this case, which was the I forgot what the hell the name of the thing was, but
RNA.
mRNA.
the
Yeah.
okay, it
It's a synthetic vaccine, basically.
right. The fact that okay, tech will understand this easily, where some other folks may not, and I'm expecting some good chuckles from him. There is an expression in the tech field: never buy a point zero version of anything.
Yep.
Yep.
Same. Now, what that translates to in the tech field is that when there is a program that's released, it's usually going to be a 1.0, 2.0, 3.0, the initial release of whatever the program is. And then you are starting off with the same one that everybody else has got, which is now going into the wild, which then starts to meet the enemy, shall we say, which is everybody's variant of their computer. And in order to make sure that it continues to operate correctly, it now needs to be updated. So 1.1, 1.2, 1.3. Some folks might remember Windows 3.1 or 3.11.
Windows for work groups.
So, considering that this was effectively the 1.0 version of whatever this new technology is for vaccination creation, there are going to be, I mean, with anything medically speaking, and it doesn't necessarily need to be vaccines. Anything that is introduced into a body is going to have a dice roll to find out if it's going to be a nat one that comes up. And sometimes it just happens that way. With something new like this, even though tested like crazy, and give them hella props for what they were able to do, this is effectively kind of a new frontier. So, yeah, there's going to be these things that pop up, and I'm sorry that it happened, but I'm glad that what did end up happening was effectively, and I'm not downplaying this. I'm going to use scare quotes for a second. Small potatoes, and I'm saying that from the standpoint of, since Tech used the term anaphylaxis, I'm so glad that you didn't have to deal with that, because nobody needs to be dealing with the idea of, oh, I'm having a wonderful time just sitting here waiting after my shot was taken. Why can't I breathe anymore?
Actually, that's what happened with the shingles vaccine with me. They put the flu vaccine in my left arm, they put the shingles vaccine in my right arm, and I started getting itchy. And hives started appearing. And the people at the doctor's office started to run around like crazy. The doctor in charge poked his head in, took one look, said, "Get her some Benadryl." Hubby broke out his emergency Benadryl. And at that point in time, I was actually reaching for my EpiPen because I had reacted so quickly to the shingles vaccine.
I have a question. Io, are you allowed to take the tetanus vaccine?
Uh, allowed? Yes, because I've had to have it forced as part of the immigration thing. The
Did
DTaP
you
is
have
part
a
of.
reaction to it?
No, thankfully.
Okay, I was going to say if you did, it might have been the polysorbate that was in it used as a
No.
stabilizer. I sent you a link to like all the known ingredients to the vaccines for both the Moderna and the Pfizer,
I saw.
and Johnson and Johnson. So
Yeah,
you
Yes.
we'll
if
include
you
that in the
compare it to
notes.
stuff that, yeah, if you compare that to stuff that you've taken that you've had reactions to, you may be able to narrow down uh, which one might actually be safe for you in the future.
Honestly, when it comes to COVID vaccines versus COVID, I would rather have the COVID vaccine and the risk of reaction than have COVID.
Right, but I'm saying
My
one
No,
might
no,
husband,
be
no, Tech, wait,
safer.
stop. Because
Okay,
what she's saying is exactly where I wanted to start getting to at this point.
gotcha.
Why?
because my husband's previous wife died from COVID. She had a whole bunch of other medical problems.
Oof.
She was transferred from a long-term care facility where she was at to the hospital. Within 30 some odd hours, she tested positive for COVID. She was not positive at the care facility, but she was positive in the hospital. Her body could not fight it. She was gone. Other people that I know were gone because of COVID, either directly or indirectly. A lady I loved who was deaf and had a stroke just before COVID started. Nobody was going to wear one of those half masks that have that clear view so she could read lips because she was deaf. So she didn't know what was going on and she was terrified. Her family was saying this poor woman was being hurt and essentially emotionally tortured because of COVID, because of trying to keep everybody safe. I understand why, and she basically died alone. And other people died alone.
Yep. Now
I was
this is
watching the death toll go up, Canada and the US and other parts of the world, and just thinking, oh, we need a vaccine, we need a vaccine. And I even talked to my doctor, and he said, yeah, you need to get the vaccine. The vaccine came out the same day that I left Canada. And as soon as the vaccine was available for me, my hubby got me the vaccine, and I was still just a visitor here in the US.
Yeah. The reason why I wanted to stop there and deal with this is for exactly this reason. The reason for vaccinations, immunizations, is so that we, as the species that we don't have to be infected with every disease that mankind knows about in order to fight it off later. Because if you contract every disease possible, yeah, there's a good possibility that you're not going to survive the encounter, because there are several of them that are, what's the word that I'm looking for? Detrimental to the continuation of human existence, both on a personal level and at a species level. Perfect example. What happens when someone has, I don't know, let's give you a nice, easy one, syphilis.
Oh,
Syphilis damages the body. Um, I'm not sure if it can render somebody sterile, but it can be passed on to children while in their mother's womb and just completely mess them up. There was, what is it, the Tunguski? No, that's not the right place, was it?
Oh, don't
There
even,
was an
don't even deal there.
yeah,
I'm
there
gonna
was an
take you.
experiment. There was an experiment that they used black men in order to see how syphilis progressed, and that reading the reports of it, I wanted to take my hands and strangle the doctors that said that this was an okay thing to do to people. You bloody assholes! How dare you take that entire group of people and torture them like that?
Okay, the problem is now you've completely jumped the timeline for where I was going. So we're gonna shelve that for the time being in its own little protective case, because that's part of another piece in a little bit.
Sorry. Not sorry because
That's
it
why I
angers
wanted
me.
to stop you, because I knew what you were going for, but that's still yet to come. What I was
It
going to
just
mention.
so it angers me.
Oh, I know. What I was going to specifically redirect us over to was Al Capone. He had an STI that was untreated while he was in Alcatraz, and it did very, very, very bad things to him, and basically ate away at parts of him. So it, there's blindness, and there's bad things that happens with your nerves, and then if due course it eats away your brain, figuratively and somewhat literally. So yeah, things like measles can very easily kill you, whooping cough, rubella, chicken pox can be lethal, for crying out loud.
And just because you managed to get those diseases as a child and survive them does not mean that if you had gotten them as an adult, you would have survived them.
And I
I
had
had
chicken
chicken
pox
pox.
twice. Yeah.
I had chicken pox twice as a kid, apparently once as a 6 month old, but I was breastfeeding, so therefore my mother's immunity helped me. And again in grade two, and I had measles sometime in Ontario in my first 4 years of school, kindergarten one, two, and three. I don't know when. I just know that my mother said that yes, she had measles. But I also had a mild form of chickenpox when I was pregnant with one of my kids
and
because one of my kids had chickenpox.
the worst part about getting chickenpox is, you know, the old school mentality was once you're over chickenpox, you know, get it early, get into your system, and become relatively immune to it. Relatively, because some people got a secondary infection or whatever. But what was just figured out much later which is why we now have a chickenpox vaccine, is that the chickenpox infection, the virus remains dormant in the body for up to like 50 some odd years, right? And it, the human body's keeping it at bay, but as you get older, your immune system does uh, slow down, and it, it manifests itself as shingles, which is painful, you know. Um, so those of us who have had chickenpox as kids, we potentially have shingles in the future, in our future.
Yeah, that's
And
why.
just ask any nurse, hey, what do you do when you find out one of your patients has shingles? And then watch the color drain from their face.
One of
I,
our friends had shingles. They were also either going through or just finished going through chemo. And he told me I needed to get the shingles vaccine if I was going to be anywhere near her because her shingles could reactivate my my chickenpox and give me shingles. And he had gone through it about the same age that I am currently, and he did not want me to experience that. So we got me the shingles vaccine, and I almost went into anaphylaxis before it. I mean, it was only a couple of highs, and they managed to get me antihistamines in time, but I don't think I can have the next shot, and I should have had the next shot about a month ago.
Now
I got.
let's also remember something. What I was describing is a problem between her body and whatever it is that's in the solution that's being injected, which is a different animal than whatever the actual virus analog is. And I say that, but I have to add the caveat of probably, because not a medical tech, but if we're going to be making sure that we cover all bases, probably not the virus analog that's in there. We expect that it shouldn't be. But the important piece about this is I had chickenpox. Tech had chickenpox. IO had chickenpox. We were all infected with the virus itself. It is in our bodies. And we have future immunity from chickenpox viruses because of that. My kid was given a vaccination for it. He will not be infected by the virus because he has the immunity without having to be infected with a virus. That's the difference. That's why inoculations, vaccinations are objectively better than just going out there and getting sick because you can. Because some of these in the wild will destroy a body. I'm not going to use a different word, but it's accurate.
Yeah, destroys the immune system, causes long-term issues. There's measles outbreaks all through North America,
Not looking forward to that.
and you got to wonder, are these people is the herd immunity still functioning? And if it's not still functioning, why hasn't the National Health done a massive vamp up of the measles vaccination for everyone? Everyone, not just children, everyone, because people might have missed a dose.
Tech, I'm going to give that question to you because I think you know what the goddamned answer is on that.
well, if we go for the medical reason, the the fact remains is that um, if you get your child the MMR vaccine, okay, in accordance with how the two doses are supposed to be given and over the years, right? Um, there is still a chance to contract measles, okay, but it's 7 out of 100 children, and that's just after the first dose at 12 months. If they get the second dose at 4 years and still haven't had the measles yet, that 7 out of 100 drops down to 3 out of 100. Okay. So there's still a chance for 3 kids out of 100 kids to get measles. Okay. And the problem is if they get measles, okay, the moment you get, uh, I think, if I remember correctly, don't quote me on this, measles, you are contagious for about 4 days, believe it was, before signs show up. And then after signs show up, you're still contagious for at least another 4 days. So a whole week plus, you're contagious. And measles is airborne. Okay. You don't have to touch a surface that somebody with measles has touched. You just have to be in the same room as somebody who has had measles has been
And
in.
measles
And
coefficient is 18 versus 1 or 2, which is what COVID was.
right. And by that, IO means that if you have 100 people in a room and who don't have measles, and one person who has measles walks through that room, okay, and they're contagious, so they're in that 8-day period, it means that roughly 18 of those people will leave that room with a measles infection. Um, there are factors about that. I don't know them all. I'm not going to claim I know them all. I don't know what all the conditions are, the perfect conditions for that perfect storm is. That is kind of like when you read a car uh, at a car dealership, you read that info panel on there and it says it gets 50 miles to the gallon. That's 50 miles to the gallon in laboratory conditions, meaning the perfect conditions for that car to get 50 miles a gallon. That's the same thing with the measles. You know, when they say 18 people out of 100, they mean in the perfect storm conditions for catching that as a infection. And it's the same way when they were saying with COVID and many other viruses, infections, and so on. They talk about when they give you those numbers, they're referring to perfect conditions. Okay, so there might be perfect conditions that that person walks through that room and nobody gets measles, but I just don't know what those are. So I can't tell you. What I can tell you is that um, children and adults get measles. Okay, there are conditions for uh, when people shouldn't get the MMR vaccine and why. I'm not going to go into details. Uh, we do have those details provided by the Arnold Palmer Hospital for Children in Orlando. I will put the link in the notes. I've already added it to our note system. Um, there is
Well, hold on.
one good thing about measles is once you have measles, it doesn't come back to your system once you cleared them. But the problem is right now that we have people who handle our medical guidance for our country, not one little city or town or whatever, who is saying, don't get vaccinated. You don't need it. You know, here's a laundry list of whatever things you need and you'll be fine. Just wash your hands. Just take vitamin A. Just do this. Just whatever. By the way, that wonderful vitamin A recommendation in Texas, they saw an influx. If I can find the news article, we'll post it. They saw it was one or more hospitals saw an influx of children coming in because they were overdosing on vitamin A.
Yeah, and
Also,
with the
also,
in conjunction with that, excuse the laughter that went with it because there is some humor in that part of it, but the sobering part of it is there were also some children that did not leave the hospitals.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
there's been a lot of
keep
children.
keep
not
keep
leaving
that
hospitals.
keep that in mind
If
also.
if you are about 50 to 55, originally from Southern Ontario, and you got your MMR vaccine when you were supposed to, you might not have MMR protection. There was a real bad batch back in the 70s. I know this because I got it and I got tested in my early teens to see if I had the MMR protection. I didn't have it, so I had to have an extra shot. I was 15 when I got that extra shot. I got checked when as part of the immigration stuff, and I have it, or else they would have given me that as well.
Okay, now this is great. This is perfect because now this keeps going on. You're actually leading the bit properly for me in this case. The thing that RFK Jr. is talking about is allowing people to get placebo instead of, or some group getting placebo and some getting actual vaccinations in order to do testing and whatever bullshit statement he's going with it. And this is exactly that case without doing it officially. If you have a bad vaccination batch, a bad lot of whatever's in that vial and it's wrong, it's incorrect in some way, it's not efficacious, I believe is the correct technical term for it, then
Or
you
it's a live vaccine when it should be a dead vaccine, which happens specifically in California with the polio vaccine.
but
I'm going to have to find that.
okay, but that's not the piece that I'm talking about though. If you get injected with what is effectively just saline, and there's nothing in there, nothing that's going to give you give your body a reaction to check it out and go, hey, let's learn about this so that we can save the body from it later. That's the placebo. And how did Health Services Canada find out about this? Simple. By people who, according to their documentation, said, yeah, they were supposed to have been inoculated and they should have all the antibodies for it. Huh. These people are getting this disease and they are all of a particular age and from a particular area. Well, what's the commonality where all of a sudden we've got this influx of people with this disease that they shouldn't be getting? And then they trace it backwards and they finally figure out what the commonality is. They've effectively gotten the placebo because comedy of errors. Just because. How many people had to perish in order for this accidental placebo system to be identified? If the number is not 0, then that's an ethics problem. It's as simple as that. So let's backtrack what I always talked about before, because, leading the bit just a little bit. There have been other groups who have also been experimented on for no other reason other than people who thought, but for science, was a good enough excuse to completely ignore ethics and morality and the idea that people are, well, people. And they are not themselves guinea pigs. Thank you very kindly.
Well, there's a difference between placebo and a bad batch. Bad batch, maybe the temperature wasn't matched right, or maybe it wasn't properly made according to how it's supposed to be made because they didn't follow the directions perfectly, or it was a live vaccine when it was supposed to have been a deactivated vaccine. That's different than giving somebody sugar water and saying, this is a vaccine. Honest, it's the vaccine. Here, take it. That, to me, is criminal. when
Yes.
it comes to vaccines. It's criminal.
Yes. Now, the reason why I'm saying it was effectively placebo is because if you're doing a proper placebo trial, a double blind study is typically what is used. What that literally means is that whoever it is that is administering whatever the drug is in whatever way, they don't know if it's a real drug or a fake drug. That information is shielded from them so that they don't skew the information to whoever the test subject is. Someone a step behind that has already randomized which one they are handing over, and they are disallowed from giving the information and passing that along, so that there is a shade between who is giving the drug versus who is giving the drug to the drug giver. I know that's a bad way of doing it. So my saying that these inoculations were effectively placebo is because the people who were giving the injections did not know it was uh, an invalid batch of drug, because they would have no way of knowing that until years later. And the group that was giving it out didn't know that it was a bad batch, an ineffective batch, to skew anything that way. So effectively, it was, even if it was not meant to be. That was my
I
point.
wish I I wish I could remember how my mother figured out that I did not have a proper MMR. My grandmother was a nurse and she worked at one of the major hospitals, so she might have read something in the literature and in one of the phone calls with my mother said something. And that raised suspicions, and my doctor did a titers test, which is how they find out whether or not you've got the antibodies for it. And I ended up with the extra shot. I wish I could remember that, and I wish both of them were still alive so I could say something to them, say, hey, do you remember this? But they're both gone, and my grandmother's children are basically either retired or out of communication because I've got no way to contact them. But I remember getting that extra shot and not wanting to get it. I remember going to the health department and just crying after I got the shot because it burned. It hurt.
Stephanie's put something over here that is quite germane, and it also kind of sticks at the heart of part of the reason why we're disgusted by this. Stephanie puts, quote, that the stuff has already been tested thoroughly is something that he cannot understand. I would also add to that, perhaps will not and refuses to understand. It is entirely possible that selective memory loss is in there. Willful ignorance might be part of it.
Worm in the brain that he was diagnosed with.
So,
Maybe it chewed away at his reasoning facility.
Well, see, the whole vitamin A crap stuff. See, vitamin A supplements, as uh, specified by actual doctors, have said that vitamin A supplements may prevent some of the serious complications arising from what happens after you've contracted measles. It doesn't prevent measles, but it might prevent some of the serious complications.
it's a mitigation.
Right. And if a child has a severe vitamin A deficiency, and the reason why I'm bringing up children, because right now it's really hitting the youth very hard. They should definitely, in accordance with doctor instruction only, have some vitamin A. But here's the thing, you know, my mother had measles when she was little, and one of the things that they had to do, just so you know, and this is something that's still given as advice by doctors, that patients who have measles should be kept in a closed and darkened room to ease the sensitivity to light and reduce eye discomfort, particularly with children. Um, One of the things that happened during my mother's generation, for the children in her generation who had measles, was that if they were not kept in a darkened room, the irritation in the eye and everything else, um, with the bright light and the inevitable rubbing of the eyes and everything else, um, children were going blind. Um, this surprised the heck out of me because I didn't see anything like this in the news,
Yeah, I don't
and
remember about that.
I don't either. But then again, my mother's older than both of us, you know,
Well,
um,
as she should be.
as she should be, yeah, but by quite a bit. And apparently, it was common, according to her mother,
Damn.
who was in the military and worked with a lot of the medics and doctors, the military ones, who saw measles. Um, and her mother, my grandmother, didn't take any chances. Not only did she darken her room, but she brought in the military wool blankets and put them over all the windows. And my grandmother, followed military medical sterilization procedures for everything.
Damn.
So, yeah, nobody in the house was allowed in or out of the room except for my grandmother, who followed all medical procedures and sterilization procedures that were pertinent or followed by the military at that time for the branch that she was in. My mother came out of it, obviously, or well, not obviously, you guys don't know her, unscathed from it for the most part. But it could have been, I could have had a blind mother if she didn't follow that stuff. And um, there were a lot of cases where there were kids her own age that she knew who had measles who came out of it blind. Um, Something about the pustules in the eyelids being coming along with the aggravation that the light sensitivity brings and the rubbing and the infection caused by it, and probably also the time period that it happened in here that we're talking about probably played a large part in the factor of that, whereas now we have much more readily available medical stuff for in-home care that we like. I mean, it is so easy to get isopropyl alcohol anywhere from 70% to, like, I can go on Amazon and get 97% isopropyl alcohol,
Yeah, which of course we
uh,
would use for cleaning our computer supplies
electronics.
because that's exactly what we'd use it for. We wouldn't use it for making our own
Oh God, no, no, no,
rockets.
no, no.
That would be wrong.
Doctors were actually during COVID telling people, look, just get 70%. If you're going to make your own home hand sanitizer from isopropyl alcohol, stick with the 70s range. Don't get the 90 proof stuff.
Yeah.
That's
Save
that's
that for
for
the
yeah,
professionals.
that's for sterilizing equipment, electronics, all sorts of stuff. That is not for, rubbing on your skin. Oh my God, no, don't do that, please. Um, Consult a doctor before you do that stuff. But what I mean is now we can also get latex gloves, or for families that have latex allergies, and non-latex gloves. We can get the kinds of masks that have high filtration. You can even get a bunny suit, and I don't mean I better be clarified because I know there's a couple people out there is thinking about Peter
An
Cottontail.
isolation suit.
Yeah, an isolation suit, commonly referred to as a bunny suit. But it's a very thin suit that prevents anything from going in or out if it's utilized properly with the proper additional accessories.
It's a
Oh,
So we
port.
can.
I was having fun when I was in the hospital in isolation. If somebody came in without the mask and the bunny suit on in order to speak with me, I gave them hell. And I went, go back out there and put the stuff on. You're supposed to wear
Yep. So
I wasn't
we're a lot
I
better at darkening our windows. We're a lot better. We have a lot more availability with stuff that helps us out that they didn't have back then.
mhm.
Um, so I think that's probably why we see those kinds of changes in numbers um, over the years. But yeah, I just thought, I mean, I was having that conversation with her just like a few days ago. And I was like, you got to be kidding me. Blindness? Really?
Yeah.
And now, mind you, this is coming from word of mouth from somebody who lived in that time. This is not um, a document that I pulled up from a medical journal. Okay. This is somebody who saw it in the field. And of course, you're hearing it from a guy on YouTube. Okay. So don't take it as your child's going to go blind if they get measles. Take it as follow the bloody doctor's instructions because there are consequences if you don't. And it's your child. Okay. We all want to, for those of us who love and care about our children, we want the best for them. We want to take care of them as best we can. Um, you know, it's one of those things that, you know, we worry. I know that some people are very worried about vaccination because they're worried about things like autism. And unfortunately, when you have medical people who are in the medical field or in charge of disseminating medical information saying vaccines cause autism, it's like, no, they don't. We don't have a single lick of validated medical science that has shown a link between autism and vaccines. And for those who say that the MMR one gives vaccines, what they found is that because of the age group that they do the first shot, that also happens to be the same time that those with autism have a they
Detectable.
have they show the signs of autism. It becomes more obvious and it tends to be diagnosed. And I say this as somebody who has a relative who has autism. Okay, and his signs of autism actually became more obvious later, not right after his first MMR. But they're in the same. But on uh, the there have been so many studies, large studies, to try to find a correlation between MMR vaccine and autism. And it's so old news that it's not true that when you have somebody coming out of the blue who's now in charge of this country's health awareness and uh, the various federal organizations that are supposed to be on the lookout to keep us safe, the general public, saying, "Oh, you know, don't get the MMR stuff, don't get the vaccines," you know, um,
Yeah. Well,
it, it,
I'm gonna pause you here at this point.
yeah,
So, couple of things really quickly. Item number one, please also remember, even though it was fictionalized, the TV series MASH did deal with measles at one point, where Klinger was spraying all around the place. Um, that was the time frame for that was set between roughly 1950 and 1953 during the Korean War, meaning the successful vaccination system for measles was not a thing in the military, never mind in a medical military thing, through the early 50s. So this is a very, very recent vaccination system that has been incredibly successful. So keep that one in mind. Smallpox also, once a worldwide push was done, was killed, absolutely destroyed in the early 70s, mid 70s, was the last in the wild infection. A disease that had been plaguing mankind for literally 10,000 years already. And we wiped it out in a generation.
They're
Less.
still trying to work on a vaccine for tuberculosis, but that's really hard to fight. I had so many arguments with doctors and pediatricians with my children about vaccines. I was willing to give them the vaccines. I wanted them old enough to tell me, "Mom, the arm is burning. Mom, I'm having a hive reaction. Mom." When the measles outbreak came about 7 years ago, before I left Canada, about a year or two before I left Canada, My ex decided that he was going to use the fact that I didn't vaccinate the children as a reason to take the kids from me. And he was going to have the court order me to get the youngest her measles vaccine. She was just a little bit young for me to want to let her have it. And I think she was about 6 months too young for her to sign on her own, or had just arrived at the age where she could sign on her own to get any vaccines that she wanted. That's the age that I wanted my kids to be at, where they could decide and read the literature themselves to decide that they wanted those vaccines because of the family history of reactions. And every single time the vaccine thing came up with doctors, they always said, "Oh, so vaccines don't cause autism." It's not autism. It's anaphylaxis I'm worried about.
Right.
To go
And
along,
here's
one second.
here's a fun fact.
To go along
Oh,
with
go
that,
ahead.
Stephanie had also put over here, I was not vaccinated because vaccines were not available. Reminding everybody, Stephanie has seen some years. Continuing, as soon as they arrived, my mother made sure I got them, except where I had already survived the disease and got immunity. I was lucky in that I never got measles, German measles twice, but not the full blown stuff. I'm going to say this, you kind of got lucky.
Yeah,
Considering the
big time.
time frame and how things had changed medically speaking, you got very lucky because yeah, you made it through whichever ones that you got, but when all these new ones came through that said, okay, it's not something that you would normally get in your day-to-day life, but considering how things can go, yeah, we'll give you a little jab and then for the rest of your life you're good. And that goes for everybody else in the freaking world. To me, I'm sorry, the this level of biotech absolutely is stunning to me when I take any amount of time to think about what could or could not be no longer an issue as a health crisis for this species. You know what I
And
mean?
before anybody who watches this thinks that I was being irresponsible, remember, you don't have to be a child to get the MMR vaccine. Teenagers and adults can get it too. Okay, it's not limited to children. It's advised that for the best herd immunity possible is that children are roughly around 12 months old, so 1 year, get it. If the child lives in an area that's seeing a measles outbreak, sometimes the doctors will advise it as young as 6 months, but they don't usually go younger than that because the child's the way the doctors say, or what the doctors say, is generally speaking that children who are younger than 6 usually have an immune system that's strong enough that the MMR vaccine doesn't create that immunity response, which is one of the reasons why they cite taking it at 12 months and 4 years, because if their immunity was still that strong at 12 months, which is not common, but it does happen, the 4 year mark is the backup to the first one. And once you're vaccinated, if your body has developed the immune response, you're immune. But as I cited earlier, there's still a 3 in 100 chance that somebody who's had both could still get it. And so
But
that's where the herd immunity kicks in. By preventing everybody else from getting it, it hopes to limit the exposure to those 3 out of 100, whatever age group they might be in. And um, an example would be that before the vaccine was introduced in 1963, okay, um, the US had anywhere from 3 to 4 million cases of measles per year. But ever since then, the number has dropped down to about 200. Not 200,000, 200. And those 200 are usually, not always, because somebody came into the US from somewhere else. It doesn't matter whether they are somebody who left the country and came back and didn't have the immunity, or if it was somebody else from outside the US who was never immunized but came back and started spreading it to those who don't have the immunity for whatever reason. That high vaccination rate helps prevent that from daisy chaining and spreading out of control.
I want to
Okay.
I want to pause here for a second because I want folks to kind of take this in a little bit of a different way. How many cases before the vaccinations? 200 grand?
Uh, you're talking about 1963
Yeah.
before it was introduced?
Yeah.
3 million to 4 million per year.
Okay. We'll call it 3.5 mil for a moment. And it went down to 200 roughly how many years later?
It doesn't say how many years it took to drop it. It just says that on an average normal year. And this
So
article currently.
Okay.
So I would guess that they're referring to the last few decades.
Okay.
200 per year.
As of May 1st, 2025, this is from the CDC, a total of 935 confirmed measles cases were reported by 30 jurisdictions: Alaska, Arkansas, California, Colorado, Florida, Georgia, Hawaii, Illinois, Indiana, Kansas, Kentucky, Louisiana, Maryland, Michigan, Minnesota, Missouri, Montana, New Jersey, New Mexico, New York City, New York State, Ohio, Oklahoma, Pennsylvania, Rhode Island, Tennessee, Texas, Vermont, Virginia, and Washington.
Okay.
There have been 12 outbreaks, and 93% of confirmed cases are outbreak associated.
Okay. I want folks to understand something. When it had been down to 200 cases a year, however quickly that happened, it's relatively quickly. I mean, when you consider that the first bar was, 3.5 million down to 200, that would be an average of 4 people per state per year.
If
4.
that.
Yep.
Think about
And
that. That would mean one family, as an average, one average family per state per year, which could easily be there is a familial genetic problem with getting the vaccination, so they were a prime target. Or one family just rolled a 1 when they went overseas and they just happened to have come back with it, which, don't get me wrong, is an absolutely terrifying concept, because that would mean that they traveled with who only knows however many dozen people in a contained flying death trap at that point. But a family, on average, a year, and that was it. Folks, I don't know how else we can put it collectively. Vaccination systems fucking work.
There was a family at the elementary school my kids went to that my kids were really good friends with, and I found out that the parents were completely anti-vax. They would not vaccinate their children at all for anything, not even the measles outbreak as it was coming up the island. And I just tilted my head when I found out that there was chicken pox in that family. No, you guys aren't going to be playing with them for about a month and a half.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And those numbers that IO cited, that the 93% of them were caused by outbreaks. If we factor those hundreds of numbers and remove the outbreaks from the equation, we drop back down to that roughly 200 number.
Yeah.
And I would guess, this is a guess, educated guess based on all the articles and all the misinformation that's been going around that these outbreaks were probably in areas that have a high amount of people or a significant number of the population of those areas who are quote unquote anti vaxxers. I'm not certain. I can't say it as a fact. It's a guess. But it's one of the few times I think I might actually be willing to put money on a guess. And I don't generally put money on a guess. I literally do not like to bet like that.
Yeah, it's
But
it's
Yes, it's the anti-vaxxers. It's the ones that actually say,
well,
"No, you're not putting that shit into my kids ever."
yeah,
well, we
maybe.
can yeah, we can go with maybe. We could also go with probably, because by the statistics, if you have vaccination, what are the odds that if you were exposed, you are going to contract?
If you've
Damned
had,
low. We
yeah,
don't even have to go into the specifics of it all. Going by what we know as lay people of how this works, the percentage of will you be infected by someone with measles if you've been vaccinated, the percentage is damned low. What is the percentage if you have been exposed and are not vaccinated? Damned high. If I'm going to put my money along with Tex on the board somewhere,
And
I'm
mine.
going with I'm going with damned high is probably the expression that we're looking for to explain where these hot patches are suddenly popping up. So, is it the anti-vaxxers? Yes,
maybe.
because the people who are remaining unvaccinated because of informed information and expectations of potential risks and harm are the ones who are intentionally keeping themselves safer because they know that they have to remain unvaccinated because of the technology, because of problems with it. They're the ones who know full well, I'm at risk, I need to mitigate that. So I will remain in a bunny suit. I will remain masked when it maybe don't necessarily need to be, but they know enough to keep themselves safer. So are these flare ups coming from anti vax people? I'm going to go on the assumption of, you bet your ass it is.
Now, here's another interesting statistic. To help prevent outbreaks, and this is for measles, okay? The population group that you're drawing a circle around, all the people in that group, okay, have to be at 95% or higher in terms of immunity. However, they get it, whether it's vaccine or they're just somebody who was old enough that they caught measles before there was a vaccine and they survived measles. Okay,
Okay?
because if you get measles and you're through it, you're now immune. That is true. Unlike other things that we can get, where we can get it again, like chickenpox, measles doesn't function that way. Okay,
Okay.
so you have to have a 95% threshold to prevent that outbreak. However, there are um, fluctuating numbers. And when you have um, in 2023, as reported in 2024, um, the vaccine rate for kindergartners was below that number. It was at 92.7%. Okay. I don't know how many school systems this entails. Okay. Um, but based on how they're talking across the country and trying to contain the outbreaks, my guess would be is that they tried to do a kind of a big picture thing where they looked at the for all the school systems that were able to report those numbers to the health coalitions and such, the groups that are supposed to track those numbers, not just some random worker up the street or whatever. So when you're below that number, and that we're talking 2.7% of kindergartners, or sorry, 2.3% of kindergartners who are missing their shots, creates the environment for an outbreak. How many millions of Americans are there in this country? How many of them have kids? What are we at, the 330 million mark for
Some
population or something like
something
that?
something like that. Yeah.
Somewhere in that ballpark. I don't have the full stats of how many people are adults in this country, how many people are children, and all that other stuff. But that's such a small number that could have gotten their shots of kindergartners to lock down potential future outbreaks. That's how significant somebody going on television saying, don't get these vaccines, they're going to give your kids autism. Don't get these vaccines, they're going to give your kids these problems or other problems. And what kind of harm it has for the country as a whole. Okay. And it's scary. And that number's dropping a little bit because now we have other groups out there, people who make money by selling anti-vaccine videos or anti-vaccine guidance, how to, get your kid through the school system without a vaccine, and so on and so forth. All the fail safes that we put in place to make sure that somebody doesn't want who, got both MMR shots but still didn't develop that immunity, right? Suddenly have um, measles. And measles isn't just an itchy rash. You can develop, well, children can develop encephalitis, the inflammation of the brain. I never say it right. Please don't hang me for it. Okay. Um, and it's inflammation of the brain is a killer. Okay. It can kill. And especially in children or old people, you have a higher risk of death than you do from, say, like being a teenager or a young adult. Um, it's measles is nasty stuff, man. This
Yeah.
is no joke.
Yeah. Really quickly, I just pulled it up. Um the population of the United States is approximately 340 million as of the last census. According to what I'm pulling up over here, the the minor population, meaning under 18 years of age, comprises roughly 12% of the population. I want that to kind of sink in just a little bit. There is roughly, and I'm gonna fudge the numbers just for a second. 85% of the population of my country should be responsible for the other 15%. It is supposed to be incumbent upon us to be safeguarding the lives of these people, these upcoming lives that are still trying to grow to fruition. What Stephanie had put earlier, saying, personally, I think parents who refuse to let their children be vaccinated should be charged with child endangerment, except when the child cannot be vaccinated for medical reasons. I cannot understand why it's simply no longer a thing that 85% of my population.
There was a report 20, 30 years ago that vaccines cause autism, and that ran like wildfire through the granola mothers community.
All right, before you go any further, by the way, we will not speak that motherfucker's name on this show.
We're not going to,
Thank you.
because I don't remember the name either.
Oh, I
But
know, I know, I know who it is.
there was that report, and several granola magazines covered it, and the granola mothers went crazy. And not just the granola ones, but also the very, I want to say Christian, but very religious mothers that didn't understand the technology behind vaccines and why they actually work and what's in them. It's the what's in them that I'm worried about because of the family history of reactions to vaccines. And I had to explain and explain and explain that I watched one of my kids' half sibling and their lips turning blue within 12 hours after getting the MMR one, and my kid passing out. Ran my kid to the hospital, got patted on the head, and said, "Your kid is fine. Take him home." Because
No, that's
by the time I got the kid to the hospital, they were back being completely pink. But it scared the hell out of me. And I asked, "What's in the MMR?" And it is an egg-based vaccine. My mother reacted to her smallpox, another egg-based vaccine. I reacted to flu shots, more egg-based vaccines. Correlation. It was never autism. It was what the hell is in the vaccine as a base, what it was made from it. Their horseshoe crabs are used to sterilize vaccines, specifically the blood of the horseshoe crabs. Something in those animals can does something to the vaccines to make them pure and sterile and usable. Is that what I'm reacting to? Or is it the egg? I don't know what I'm reacting to. I'm
yeah.
assuming it's egg.
Uh,
So far, my younger kids, they have not reacted to vaccines from what they've told me.
it's a good
But
start.
still, it scared me watching this poor little baby who was just starting verbalizing everything, turn blue and pass out in my arms.
Yeah, let's not have that. We're getting pretty close to the top of the hour, so I want to get a couple of things really quickly so we can wrap up over here. Stephanie still doing the Lord's work over there, by the way. Stephanie, thank you. Uh, the really sick thing, that doctor who has been struck off, meaning was stripped of his doctor title and whatnot because of the
Medical
shenanigans they
license,
pulled,
yeah.
was actually trying to sell his company's individual vaccines rather than MMR. True, that son of a bitch was trying to make money exploitatively, exploitatively, and fraudulently, and unfortunately, he still has a voice out there, which is part of the reason why this crap fest has been happening the way that it has.
And those crunchy granola moms are still going, "Nope. Autism is caused by vaccines. I'm not vaccinating my child. Autism."
Yeah,
I hope they at least got their kids their damn COVID vaccines.
yeah. The best argument that I've heard so far about this is, what has the increase in breast cancer been telling you about everything? Is it a factor in the everything? Or is it that we can detect it better over time now? Extend that
Detection.
to extend that to um, autism, which, by the way, is called spectrum because it could be a host of different things to any degree or almost no degree. But,
Yeah, and
calm your pits, people.
case in point, my relative who has autism, who was diagnosed with it much later in life. Um, he was not initially diagnosed with autism because he didn't meet the requirements at the time of being receiving that diagnosis. When the the checklist changed and said, oh, by the way, we're including this and this and this now because we see that this falls within the spectrum of autism. Boom. Now he was autistic. And the thing is that thanks to that, he now gets the extra assistance and care and has been progressively not getting better from autism, but improving his lot in life. And that's a major benefit that people need to remember. Science does not care about feelings, okay? That applies to medical science, that applies to physics, whatever. But it is a self-correcting system. And when we learn more and apply that knowledge to that system, we get better in terms of how we develop our technology for cars or cell phones or television, movies, medicine, vaccines, and so on and so on and so on. Okay? If you don't believe me, you know, look at what we've learned from the space race, from all the things that we do to try to get out into outer space, to try to get off the planet, to try to explore our galaxy, and then how we turn that stuff around and apply it to our own planet. Just the fact that we have teams of people putting up satellites that are designed to analyze um, other planets are tested on analyzing our own planet first so we can better calibrate them and better utilize them over these vast distances. We've actually learned more about our own planet. So this is a very big thing. Science is not perfect, otherwise it wouldn't need to be self-correcting. Okay? But I want you to, for anyone who doesn't think that um, we have come a long way in our medical science, just go through the medical journals that talk about life before each vaccine that we've come out with and how many people died in those times, how many cases were reported, the prediction of unreported cases based on human nature. For it's a lot of people, when they get sick, they don't tell anyone. They're ashamed, or they want to go to work because they want to lose their job or whatever. But I mean, we have right now, as disclosed by the CDC, between January 1st of this year and April 17th, 800 measles cases were reported. Okay? The second highest annual case count in 25 years. Okay? And 85 patients were hospitalized. Of those reported, 3 have died. Why this is important is that, as doctors have specified, if a child contracts measles, 1 in 1,000 will develop the inflammation of the brain, but there's also a chance for respiratory issues. Okay. And 1 or 2 children out of 1,000 with measles will die from it. Okay. We've already had 3 children die. So that's above the 1 to 2 child count. Who knows? Maybe the correct number is 1 to 3, and we're right in that ballpark figure.
Let's hope we stayed 1 to 3.
Okay. I really hope nobody else dies from measles, especially not children. But here's something else.
No, I need to cut you off, man. You're getting long.
But hold on. This will be my end point. 7 to 10 years after contracting measles, 1 in 100,000 will develop what's called SSPE, subacute sclerosing panencephalitis, and will die of that. So there's still a chance for these other people in these 800 cases that are reported cases of somebody else dying 7 to 10 years from now. They still have targets on their back, people. That's how deadly and dangerous measles can be. It is.
Great. That means I still have a target on my back. Stephanie has said autism was not mentioned when I was a child as the most extreme cases were picked up. And it was upheld that autism did not occur in females. Yeah, right. She's so right about that. I remember being 12 years old in the 80s with a discussion going around whether or not I had ADHD, ADD, or autism. And I was sitting in the principal's office with the teacher, my other teacher, and my mother. And one of them said, well, that doesn't occur in girls. And I tried to get a diagnosis 7 years ago. And the psychiatrist I saw did not see autism in women at all. In fact, I wrote a really nasty Google thing about the fact that he did not see it in women. A man that I knew who was a couple years older than I was, a couple years before that, got an autism diagnosis in his 50s. Anthony Hopkins has a autism diagnosis. And I think he got that in his 70s. Women present differently. We mask better. And because of that, it's just assumed that we don't have it. And many of our stims are considered socially acceptable ones. Crocheting, knitting, cross stitch, writing, drawing, socially acceptable. Whereas men and boys tend to act out more. The tantrums, the violence. So they get the diagnosis a lot sooner than girls and women. And I'm talking AFAB and AMAB, not...
I get you. So I'm going to do something I normally do not do to get us to the end over here. I'm going to share a piece of my screen. Hold on a second over here. Making sure that I'm doing this the right way. No. Sorry, I've got a number of things that are going on all simultaneously, and yeah, I guess that's what I'm gonna do, so you guys can take a look at this. And I'm putting this up on the screen for everybody else to see. What you're seeing on YouTube right now is the website covid.gov, which is hosted here in the United States. There's just one small problem. What you're seeing is covid.gov from December 31st of last year. This is courtesy of the Wayback Machine.
Archive.org.
Mm-hmm.
I present to you what it currently looks like. This
Censored.
this is what it looks like.
Censored. I can't say what I want to, what I'm thinking. This channel would be destroyed.
Instead of it being, how do you get information? How do you get help for your stuff? You instead get this reality show-esque title, which includes the current president-in-chief with a conspiracy theory title behind him. Yes, I'm intentionally downplaying this like crazy because I'm sorry, I'm just intentionally downplaying this like crazy. But I did not believe when I heard about this, and I had to look it up. So,
And he's the reason why COVID got so bad in the United States in the first place.
So I want us to leave off
Sorry,
with a
sorry, sorry.
question, and I'd like it to be as quick as possible for both of you. Very, like I said, just as quickly as you can. Considering how these branches of government that have to do with health and human services are under the auspice of the executive branch, which means under the auspice for the office of President of the United States, and how they have been manipulated and perverted, dare I say, into being, I can't even call it disinformation. I will call it simply outright lies. What what should we be suggesting people go looking towards for actual, proper, unbiased information going forward? Because the links that we're going to be putting into the show notes, we have no way of knowing how long some of them to various .gov organizational websites are going to remain valid. Tech, as quickly as possible, I'm going to throw it over to you first because you are tied closer to .gov than either one of us.
Um, you want to know what I would change? What we could change to do better,
What
basically?
where we should be looking to send people when these .gov links that we're sending folks over to eventually become too politicized and just go to a 404.
That's hard. Um, I don't have an easy answer for that. The archive system is good in that we can pull up archival information. And if we're pulling up something that was a month ago still valid before it was replaced with essentially propaganda, then it might still be valid, right? Science can change the next day. Result actions can change the next day. Dr. Fauci even admitted that, when he talked, and I reference him because of that website, where originally he told the public, you don't need the medical masks. The doctors need those, so save them. Don't stock up on them. And then later on, he said, "No, this is more serious than we thought. You do need those masks, or here's the equivalent." And that's how quickly something can change when you're dealing with something brand new. Measles is not brand new. COVID was brand new. Okay. And we learned a very tough lesson by it. Some of us learned. But measles, we have intimacy with. Okay. This is not something new, just like syphilis is not something new. Okay. And when it comes to, well, the sources I would normally go to are gone. Well, we have the Wayback Machine for some of the web stuff, but what the .gov can't do is they can't kill the medical journals. Okay, um, there are still public libraries that have medical journals. There are many medical journals post online. They even make some information available to the general public for free. Okay, and if you have doctors, and those doctors aren't a chiropractor, and I trust me, if a chiropractor is just adjusting bones because something's a little out of whack in terms of the bones, that's fine. That's what a chiropractor does. But if you have a chiropractor who's saying, "Oh, I'm going to readjust your spine. It's going to get rid of the common cold," don't go to them for guidance on the common cold, nor for measles or anything else. Okay, they're a quack. Um, and that is the advice I got from a chiropractor who is very good at adjusting bones. I know he put my neck back in alignment after several vertebrae went out of whack. Um, and it's going to be hard. It's going to be a fight. It's going to be a slog. And the longer that we have these people in positions of authority telling us that we don't need vaccines, that we don't need these other things, as long as they keep saying that and the years go by and they start taking down these resources, it's going to be harder and harder to find help. You need to find doctors, medical professionals who are trying to do their best to fight this misinformation. And those are the ones you need to seek out. And it can be very hard for somebody who's had a family practitioner, medical practitioner, who has been taking care of your family for several decades going, oh, you don't need that vaccine. It's all a bunch of hooey, to not trust them. It's really hard to go, wait a minute, what? I'm sorry, but I can't trust you with my family anymore. You're putting my family in danger because you have this weird view that does not coincide with medical science.
And Io, you suggestion on where we can send folks when these things finally break?
John Hopkins. I put a bunch of links to Johns Hopkins, Canada and U.S., and the measles information for their U.S. site. They're still updating.
Maybe Mayo Clinic?
Mayo Clinic too. A couple of the other places, probably Shriners with their children's hospitals.
That's consideration.
You know, if the government is trying to hide the information, that doesn't mean that the information isn't being collected. There are non-governmental bodies that are collecting the information because they need to know so that they can plan for their people to attack whatever is coming at them. The only reason why COVID got so bad is because the person at the top of the heap said, it's not that bad. Do this, do that, do this, do that. And when they finally got it, it was a miracle of monumental proportions that the doctors did in order to keep them alive. It's actually documented. And the doctor that saved them got fired. I have no love for that person. The doctor, sure, but no love for the person that fired the doctor.
And the misinformation is strong. It really is. You know,
Yep.
Kennedy went out there and said that one of the children who died from pneumonia. The child died from pneumonia because pneumonia was caused as a complication of the measles. And it's one of the leading causes of death from measles is pneumonia complication, onset by measles.
Okay.
Every time I've gone and muted myself tonight, it's because I've had a small coughing fit. I'm still not completely over the pneumonia I had last month. I'm still on oxygen. I don't know what hit me, but for all I know, it could have been measles. And my immune system was ravaged because I was sick back in December.
Yeah, well,
so we don't know what hit me. The test results are still coming back.
I thought you were on mute because you were refraining from swearing.
No, I was having coughing fits.
No, I was just, you know.
If I'm going to swear, I'm going to swear. Shujin knows I swear. And if I really want to swear, I swear in French.
There is that. Couple of items that was over here. Lexa, by the way, hi, said, I tried looking up something about the measles blindness stuff, found a PDF from a USAID site. USAID has been in the news relatively recently. We're not going to go any further into that. Please do a search for the news about it from this time frame. Also continuing saying, couldn't access, had to use the archive. Thank you, Wayback Machine, and all the various archiving systems that are allowing that to be still accessible. And Stephanie had also put, there is always the NHS website.
And if we're talking about other medical journals and resources, there's always Canada. Canada and the United States are very closely linked, a little too close in my opinion, but they're closely linked. If one ends up with diseases, the other is going to end up with the same diseases because of all the cross-border traffic that at least used to happen. Right now, not so much, but if there's measles cases in Washington, they'll hit British Columbia. If there's measles cases around the Great Lakes, they'll go into Manitoba, Ontario, Quebec, and New Brunswick.
I'm going to leave
So,
us,
yeah.
and I'm going to leave us with this. Exactly that. We've talked about before how science is it respects no boundary other than knowledge and ignorance. It's literally it. And in this case, as always, ignorance being used in its actual literal term, which is not being educated about something. So you either do know about something or you don't know about something. The vast majority of us don't know far and away more than what we do know. That's just a fact of life. If you need to find information, and for whatever reason you're being stymied because a group doesn't want to give you what you are asking for, there are plethora of locations where you can get what you need. You can go to your local library. Yes, here in the US, there was a push at one point to try to get library book information. And the librarian said, go pound sand. You could go to individual doctors to try to get a consultation, which could be expensive and might be difficult to do. And they could be threatened. But there's still that small problem of there are journals that are still out there, as was mentioned. There are different groups. There are different medical organizations. Lots of them. Both domestically and internationally. And as a matter of fact, never mind any other group. The federal government of Canada has actually come out and specifically told us here in the US there are plenty of very similar groups doing very similar research with very similar information to help you out on our side of the border if you can't find it officially on yours. You're still welcome to look it up. Canada, you guys are still the better part in this relationship. Thank you.
As a token Canadian, you're welcome. It's what we do. We've always made sure that the information was there. And I've put a lot of information from Canada into show notes for you to add.
I don't know how much I'm going to be able to add because of the amount of room that's available in there, but I'm going to do my damnedest to make sure that I put in as much as I possibly can. So as always, everybody, thank you for being with us. We hope that you found something worthwhile in all of our perspectives. You got something to think about for the week ahead. Lexa, Stephanie, guys, thank you. Glad you were able to make it. Please take care of yourselves. Just be safe and just stay healthy. Io, thank you ever so much. You have yourself a good night and hopefully a recovering rest of the weekend.
It's going to be interesting. The oxygen generator died. About 5 minutes ago, the oxygen generator died. We've got about 4 or 5 tanks available for tomorrow.
Have you tried turning it off and on again?
That's what hubby's doing right now.
Good call. You take care of yourself, huh?
Just the irony. The irony.
I wasn't gonna go there.
Oh, if I was to do a Bridget rant right now, it's the U.S. healthcare system being a total mess, joke, and scam. And that's all I'll say.
Tech, thank you very much. You take care of yourself too this upcoming week, huh?
Yeah, you too.
As I had mentioned at the top of the show, I'm going to go ahead and remind here at the bottom. In a couple of weeks, the weekend of the 23rd, which is Memorial Day weekend, we will not be having a show because I will be doing very likely the last charity radio stream that I will be doing for the likely ever. I will be once again doing 36 hours, or I should actually say 36 plus 3 hours on. And I will have a little bit more information about that a little bit later. It is a charity fundraiser for the Roswell Park Cancer Institute here in Buffalo, and I will get as much information as I can as quickly as I can. It's been exceptionally difficult for me to try to put stuff together, but I'm working on making that happen. If you'd like to be in touch with us, as always, Discord is very likely the best opportunity, but you can find us over on Discord and BlueSky. Yes, there is a Facebook account, but I just use that more as a signaling system more than anything else. Beyond that, please be safe, be careful, mask up if you have to be sharing space with people, and just thank you. So, till the next time we're together, everyone, as always, we will be looking forward to seeing you soon. I personally wish you, as always, the peace I no longer have. I wish you the strength that I've learned. I wish you well. And even though I don't show it very often, my lady, I still have our rings. And almost 20 years on, I am still terribly in love. Well, matane Fujin. I love you. I miss you. You dream of me. Till the next time we're together, everyone, as always, good night.